Hi, I'm Droolbatz. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2014 horror film Out of the Dark. I'm going to be reviewing it and discussing it based on its premise, its production value overall, quality of filming, etc., and finally, how it stands out or blends in compared to other horror movies, or just movies in general. Hope you enjoy. So, as I stated, Out of the Dark is a fairly recent movie, 2014, starring the American actress Julia Stiles, and then a couple of other actors that I didn't really know. But just because I don't know them doesn't mean anything. The premise is essentially that Julia Stiles' character, her father has a paper plant. He produces paper down in Santa Clara, Colombia. And after living with her husband and their little daughter in London for a while, Julia Stiles is coming to take over her father's paper company. However, once they get there, there's some evidence of supernatural things happening. For example, when her husband takes a photo of their daughter, he notices like a weird face hiding in the leaves behind her. When they go down for a festival of the Saint Children, which are like, they have a festival every year in honor of these children who were sadly like murdered and burned to death by conquistadors many years ago. And while she's down there, while the family's down out in the village, surrounding the paper company, the little daughter claims that a girl stole her bunny, her stuffed bunny Sterling. And anyway, later on, the parents leave the daughter alone for a little, not alone, she's with a babysitter, but the babysitter puts her to bed while the parents go to like a company event as Julia Stiles starts to get acquainted, and the girl sees her bunny appear in like this laundry chute, and so she goes to get, that's like in her room that her dad had closed earlier, and she goes in and there's somebody down there. She screams for help, and when they eventually find the daughter, she's very sick and has like a fever and stuff. Now the question begs, is there ghost children? And are the ghost children trying to hurt the daughter? And if they are, why are they doing that? So that's basically the premise. I thought the whole concept of like a ghost that's a child, specifically hunting another child, that's been done a couple of times before, but it's not, not overdone. So, I mean, it's not like the most common premise I've ever seen, but, it's been done before, so it can be done again. That said, production value. So, this movie had an actress that is well known to me. She's been in Jason Bourne movies, which I own the first three. I love Jason Bourne. She's been in, like, 10 Things I Hate About You, and many things. She was in a YouTube, like, series that was like professionally done for a while, back when I was in high school and like first learning about YouTube. So she's a well-known actress, and it was pretty clear that they had some good quality actors. That said, the script was a little off in certain points. Not too noticeably, but it was a little bit like when you were watching, like, there's a scene where they're riding in a car and Julia Stiles is talking and you're just like, would anyone really say that? But that's okay. Scripts are not the only thing that matters. Sadly, other things that could matter were kind of neglected in this film. For example, they have this whole movie set in Santa Clara, Colombia. There's beautiful vegetation there. There's a lot of cultural things to work with. Obviously, it's a Spanish-speaking area, and they utilized almost zero of that, and I was very disappointed. Trying to keep my personal judgment out, but most of the film that was filmed repetitively in this house. Like, a lot of the scenes were shot in like the girl's bedroom or like downstairs in like this main room. There was like one area of like outside vegetation where the little girl plays, where you seemingly see the ghost children or whatever they're seeing there. And then there were a few other points of like variety, but most of it was a little repetitive. It wasn't too bad, but it was still just enough that you're like, and they didn't utilize like hardly any Spanish speaking at all. For example, whenever they would speak to the Colombians, they would speak in English with just the Colombian accent. Like the babysitter and a lot of the people who worked at the company, there was a scene or two where they're talking to the locals who speak a different dialect. It's a different language. It's not Spanish, but it's a different like language that the natives speak. I don't know. It starts with a K. I had the movie on subtitles so I could remember it, but it was, I don't remember what it was, but they actually did speak in their language with the subtitles, so that was good. But again, it had like the person translating into English over it. And you know, they had this scene where it was like a festival and they didn't utilize it at all. It was just so that the daughter could claim she saw a ghost. Overall, I just felt like, what is the point of setting it in Colombia if you're going to not utilize the landscape or the culture or anything? Like, you could have just set it in the backwoods of America. So that's not necessarily a criticism, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I would have done it differently had I filmed the movie. I thought more of the Spanish would have been nice, because I'm trying to learn Spanish, but that's just me. That said, I had a big criticism about every time the ghost children popped up on screen. I'm doing that because are they ghost children? You'll never know. They didn't speak Spanish either, but it's like, you know, would local small children from the conquistador days be speaking English? Absolutely not. Would they be growling like animals? Probably not that either, but they had the ghost children being like, and like, no, and just like making all these weird noises. I'm used to like creatures in horror movies doing weird noises if they're like a demon or like a monster or some kind of unknown entity, but when it's explicitly like, oh, this is a ghost of a being who was alive, it's like, why would they make that weird noise? No, the children were not like, you know, 3, 4, they were like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you're a verbal person, you can speak by that age, so they would have been speaking Spanish as ghosts, but no, they were growling and making weird like monkey dog noises. I think if the child actors were actually doing that, they probably had a lot of fun, so I'm not begrudging it, but if they just did that in post-production, I don't know why they did that, and it did bother me that the ghosts were making animal jungle noises. Okay, now I'm going to discuss kind of how the movie like fits in with or stands out from other movies of the genre. I will be spoiling the movie, so if you want to bow out so you don't get it spoiled for you, now is the time. I'll give you a minute. Okay, I think the people who will leave will have left. So basically, as the daughter is getting very sick, Julia Stiles is like, the people are like, oh, she's got a flu, clearly, and she's like, wait, all the issues she's having, she's not getting better. These are symptoms of mercury poisoning. And she kind of discovers that in the 90s, a bunch of children got sick with similar symptoms and went missing. Was it the ghost children who did this? Why would they do that? Basically, after a lot of investigating, Julia Stiles' daughter goes missing, and you're like, oh. So the grandfather, her dad, but the little girl's grandfather helps them look, the husband and Julia Stiles, and basically it is revealed that the dad, who was running the company for many years, was not disposing of like the waste products from the paper properly, and basically a lot of children were apparently getting symptoms of mercury poisoning because he was dumping it in the water or something. And Julia Stiles is like, well, Dad, that's awful. What did the parents say? Like, how did you repay them? And he just kind of like shady businessman look, like, and she's like, oh, you didn't tell them. Basically, they have to find these ghost children and the daughter to save her in time, and it's revealed that the dad, when he realized the children were sick with mercury poisoning, he like kidnapped them and like, I mean, I assume some of them were like really close to death anyway, but he killed them and like hid the bodies underneath, like in this well type underground thing with water in it, which is terrible. And so it's like, oh, it's not the saints' children, you know, that were killed by the conquistadors who are trying to kill the little girl. It's these kids who were poisoned by mercury, and they're trying to get their story out. And eventually, as they're looking for them, the grandpa, the dad of Julia Stiles, goes down there and he sees the ghost children, and they go, and they make their stupid animal noises, and they kill him and give the daughter back as like retribution. And the movie ends with like them deciding to be ethical or something. But I don't know, it was just kind of like, I will say I thought it was clever how they had the two sets of ghost children. That was a good twist, and you wouldn't have like necessarily expected it, but it also complicated the plot a little bit. But I guess that's the price you pay. I'm not saying I could have done it any different, but at the end of the movie, after that like whole revelation of like they were killed by mercury, there's like a blurb that pops up on the screen like, you know, end the violence, end whatever, visit this website to learn more. So I've went to the website that is now defunct. The page is now defunct, but basically it's revealed that like this whole movie was some kind of elaborate collaboration advertisement for this organization that's like, you know, we want to, I couldn't tell if it was like, you know, like ethical business owning, or if it was like stopping cultural trauma, or if it was like treating the environment well. I really couldn't tell because the website was defunct, and my house Wi-Fi is a little iffy, and it was sadly at a bad time, so I couldn't get it to like load more, like the homepage or anything. But essentially the whole movie was an ad, which really cheapened it for me, and it wasn't a strong film in my opinion anyway, but this kind of just put the topping on the cake for me. I've seen a lot of music videos where they've kind of like been an ad, like the Cigarette Duet by Princess Chelsea is basically like, don't do smoking. And there's one by 30 Seconds to Mars, for example, that is like, the polar ice caps are melting, save the polar ice caps. And I mean, that's a little bit the same way when they have an ad at the end or the beginning, but you know, you feel like you're being preached to a little bit, but it's also like, I respect that they're trying to get the message out there. But I think it's very different when like an artist is like, well, I stand behind this, so I'm putting it in my music video, versus like an entire, you know, full-length movie, I don't know how long it was, like an hour and a half at least, dedicated to this, and the website's not even still going, and it was a mere 4 years ago that this movie came out. It was not clear what the message was there, and the fact that they, you know, didn't utilize the culture but seemed to be like advertising that that's a big part of it was just stupid to me. I don't know. I give it a 2 out of 5 stars at best. Out of the Dark was just not a satisfying film. It didn't have the sense of urgency that some do, because it didn't have particularly fascinating editing, and, well, I already shared my complaints, but I was not super satisfied with the film. If you disagree, let me know. If you agree, also let me know. Have some thoughts? Do you know what the website was supposed to be about? Let me know.